All right, welcome everybody. This is the Refinery. I'm one of your hosts, Leslie, with the Conservative Union. We also have T. Tillett, with the Conservative Union. We have JD and Felicia with Free Radical Network, and coming along later, Corey and Andy with the Party of Choice. And
Maybe they have car issues and stuff
oh,
and are trying to
okay.
get that settled. So hopefully they'll be here.
Well, I'm assuming they would walk over broken glass to get here. It's just that there may not be an adequate supply of broken glass for them to walk over. So I
Always a
understand
trouble.
life happens, life happens. So here we are. First, I want to say officially, awesome job, JD, with all of the clips that you made of last week's episode. I don't know if everybody saw those. He published them in one blog post on Free Radical Network, and then was dribbling them out kind of as they came along, both on Facebook and CU, and they're of course on YouTube as well. Um, he excerpted some of Andy's great stuff and managed to make, I think he made two of them that started out with the phrase that I now can't remember. What was it? And it was you that said it.
Fomenter's going to foment. There's only one that started
Yes.
off with fomenter's going to foment. I'm taking I'm getting that link right now and I'm going to put it in the chat room, which we have a lot of people in the chat room
Yay!
early. So
Hi,
that's
chatters.
hey Prue and hey Barbara and also George in the chat. Um, yeah, no, it was really fun.
Templeton the rat, that must be George.
That's George.
Okay.
Um,
And by the
it
way,
was
everybody, T is Avon, Connecticut style. That's T. Tillett. There.
awesome.
I'm
It was,
I'm less TX in the chat, just because whatever.
and I'm NJ1, I think.
Because we like to confuse everybody and have totally different names in chat than we do on the Hangout.
I don't. I don't. I want it said for the record.
You just lack the creativity.
Yes. Run with that. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I was really happy with the kind of response that we got from the clips. We actually had one that got like 75 views or something like that. I think the biggest one was the establishment is dying, which is the one that starts off with the fomenter's got to foment or gonna
I
foment.
love that one. Yes.
But no, it's really cool and it's nice that 82 views on that and that's a big deal to me.
Oh, I think so, and it does prove that what we were thinking and what's intuitive, that people will give a couple of minutes to an idea, because otherwise they look at the refinery and even our description might be tantalizing and our personalities are bubbly and inviting and people say, oh, that's wonderful, but they click on it and it's like, oh my god, 2 hours. That's really a major investment. I don't think
Yes,
so. But by giving people a bit of a snippet of what it's like, that what we're talking about, it's certainly not super intellectual from my standpoint, what anybody's getting from me, um, but it's more of a, not just talking about the news and what's going on today, but how to talk about it, how we can message our way through, and how we can in fact grow the conservative movement. And it's actually, if people will invest the 2 hours and listen, they'll learn. And then also, my hope is that people can listen and learn and contribute and help, and then we can all take over the world with conservative thought, because that's of course the
absolutely.
goal.
Yes, that's the major goal here is trying to get more wins so that we can actually, live in a sane country uh, for the first time in a
Because
while.
we so don't right now. My God.
Right. No, and just from your, looking through your news feeds on Facebook or Google Plus or Twitter, it's pretty apparent that a lot of people are not thinking that we are living in a particularly sane environment at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
what's mind blowing to me, maybe to sort of launch into the discussion here. Uh, Drudge today on the front page of Drudge. Ah,
Oh,
there's a poll up and it's got three options. and it's framed having to do with two people who neither of which I'm a particularly huge fan of, Sarah Palin and Pat Buchanan, and I have a special uh, disgust with Pat Buchanan because um, I hate to admit it, but I have in the past. My family was involved in the Reform Party in New Jersey in the early '90s, and that whole thing, whatever good it was thinking about doing, got utterly uh, co-opted by the Buchanans, and the whole thing got just turned into the worst kind of situation. Um, but I'm with him in this current thing that's happening. Is basically a debate: should we try and impeach Obama or should we not? Sarah Palin says we should try and impeach Obama. Patrick Buchanan says maybe we should, worry about winning the Senate and the presidency in 2016 because those are things that are actually important to do. Whereas the president is only going to be around for 2 more years in office, so why focus on something that isn't necessary? He's already going to be gone anyway, so let's focus on something that actually matters.
And I'm with you. I agree with him, and I disagree with Sarah Palin. And that's not the first time I've disagreed with Sarah Palin. It won't be the last. Um, and the problem is the megaphones that people have, and they're tapping into all of the anger that's out there, and it's because there is a vacuum of positive messaging and things, ideas to really rally around that we can be involved in instead of thinking about impeachment and all of the negativity. It's just the
Right.
all the talk about impeachment is because there's just a vacuum. There's no other big idea or big. I mean, heck, there's if we had a slogan or that's why I'm like one of my notes is that we really need to get our act together on messaging the one size fits all thing, because I think that idea, which obviously, Kevin Williamson, if you're listening today, because apparently you listen to our show, I'll be looking forward to what your article says tomorrow as you summarize what you learned today. Um, yeah, that's
It's
kind of an
good.
inside joke, but
It's good to have high hopes. It's good to have those aspirations there.
I has my dreams. I has my dreams. Actually, no, it was last week that we talked about one size fits all, and then Kevin Williamson's article the next day was on that same subject. So, clearly he's listening to this show and stealing our ideas, which is fine. Um, my lawyers will be calling him soon.
Oh my goodness, he's had enough. He's had enough lawsuits aimed at his head recently. So
Oh, has he?
yeah,
I don't.
uh,
I don't pay attention to anything that starts with bad news about Kevin Williamson because he's like my hero and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to read anything bad that's hateful directed towards him. Um, but anyway, if we can kind of get going with actual deliverables or really something to do that really pushes the idea of the left is one size fits all and we are customization oriented, that's the kind of thing that can apply to all of the different issues like Obamacare and the economy, jobs, almost any topic can be covered by that sort of thinking. And if we can get something going with it, then I'm thinking that could fill the void that is currently being filled by impeach the bastard and,
yeah.
the shaking of the fists.
I wanna just point out something that's happening in chat right now. Templeton the Rat says, "Why do conservatives not remember the 1990s? Why do we have amnesia about what happened after impeachment and what it cost us? Why don't they understand that high crimes and misdemeanors doesn't mean the wide swath of people? It doesn't mean to us. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean to the wide swath of people what it means to us. So that's a really valid point. We did try this already, and we wound up having a really, really, really close presidential race that really shouldn't have been.
Right.
in 2000. So I don't think that that was goodwill generated from the
I'll
impeachment
tell you
process.
why. I think the answer to George's question is we are facing a lot of things coming all at once. The Clinton administration was not on steroids the way this one is, as far
Hmm.
as abuse of power, as far as executive order orientation, as far as government by fiat just willy-nilly enforcing it. There are a lot of things that frighten people. And that's where the rage comes from. And this is something I think we need to deal with before we even talk about deliverables in the long run. Yeah, we can talk about how to message the things around one size fits all, but when we're talking about how to move everyone forward, we have got to deal with the fear. And I'm seeing it ramp up, especially around the immigration business. People reacting without thinking or without thinking long enough and hard enough. People reacting by going default to the impeachment argument. We've got to talk about the fear, and we've got to figure out how we deal with it. And for me, whenever I'm afraid of something that's going on, and whenever I'm getting really weirded out over the way things are, I can't stop them by worrying about it. I have to do something. And so giving people the realistic, small, achievable tasks that they can do uh, is probably the best thing to start with. What can we give people to direct them toward, to encourage them to do, so that they are doing things that have achievables, that have measurements, that have metrics involved, that they can look to and say, I did this and it helped achieve that. That's one of the best ways to dispel fear. You can't dwell on it and expect anything to change. You have to find an action item. I'm so worried that people are giving into the fear that they feel, and what it looks like on the outside to people who are not plugged in, who don't know what's going on. It looks like paranoia, and it doesn't make for a good look for us. It doesn't give our message any strength if we're operating from fear, if we're operating from anger and rage. It stops people from taking us seriously, and that's what worries me.
And
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think you're right that we have that the fear is driving people in large part, myself included. Fishy and I are both here in Houston. This immigration crap hits us literally where we live. Um, and so fear, and yet also the optimism and the determination and the knowledge that we'll get through it and we'll be okay because we saw how Houston handled Katrina, and we have faith in Houstonians and in our fellow man, but still there is the fear because we don't see that anything is being done to stop the flow. With Katrina, it was an event that was over and then it was recover from it. With the immigration flood, it's continuing. And if anything, it's getting worse, and we're getting more and more every day, and nothing's stopping them from coming over. So the fear is very real. What and I'm thinking give people the OFA or something to no, one size fits all OSFA, not Obama for America. Sorry, I think in terms of that OSFA mnemonic that you see on one size fits all on clothes and stuff. Um, I'm thinking of that as a distraction to get people away from it because I don't have a solution. Do any of y'all have deliverables or an idea?
Well, one of the things that we really do need to talk about more with people is how this electoral system works. If you have good people elected at the local level, they're going to help embolden folks up the chain. Just tonight in League City, that's the opposite end of town from us. There's a big meeting in the city council. They passed a resolution that had something to do with the immigration business. I don't know what it says. I can't speak to the resolution itself, but it was something that they could do at a local level that would give them, I guess, the ability to react. You know, there was an official notice, there was an official action on the books as to what the city would do. That's one example of something that one group is doing now that's a little bit different from, say, what you're seeing in Marietta in California, where you're seeing protests, where you're seeing clashes, you know, that are just bound to happen coming forward from this. The things that we do to hold up the rule of law and to hold our elected officials accountable to it are the things that we can do anywhere, anytime, right now. The difficult part, and somebody said this on a thread I was in today, how do you get people to do things? Well, isn't that the question I've been asking myself for over 5 years as a Tea Party organizer and leader and founder? How do you get people to? You have to make them understand the problem, but you also have to make them understand there are certain things they can do that are achievable, that are actionable, and there are certain things that they're best putting on the back burner until they've got some other things handled. As far as Texas, there's been talk about more money to police the border. How far can we go with that as a state, say, in Texas, when the Border Patrol is federal, is it not?
Right.
And ICE is federal, is it not? And Health and Human Services, which should be dealing with the health issues involved around this, is federal, is it not? And if Texas is $30 billion in debt, and Texas is going to have to balance its budget coming up in January, oh my, then who's paying for this? How is that fiscally going to happen?
Well, and we've already committed to what 1.30 million a week with our border surge. Um, but I do think that the state is the state and the county and the city and all of that is not only probably the best place for people to target their activities, which can be, it can be research, it can be talking to neighbors about what to do, because come late August when schools start and you have all of the immigrant children in your schools, that's going to change things. And you know, you might need to be prepared because your school is going to start running out of money for the free lunches and all of that kind of stuff. Um, and if you don't speak Spanish, your teacher's not going to be able to communicate with the students who have maybe never been to a school in their entire lives and they're 10 years old. I mean, who knows? We don't know how bad this is going to get. But locally is probably the best place for people to start looking, and it's also the only place they're going to have any kind of success, because if you're looking to if you're looking to the feds for anything, you're certainly going to have your heart broken, because Border Patrol, HHS, ICE, all of those people are run by the federal government, and that's where the bulk of the problem is. That's where the roadblock is, and it's not something that we can really fix or affect. So I think you're right in
Right.
that targeting locally makes sense, and figuring out what it is we can do within the realm of the federal. I mean, how much can our DPS do? How much can our county government pay for? And maybe stop sending money to the feds to send them an invoice for the fact that we're doing their job for them. I mean, I'm guessing that Greg Abbott's looking into that.
Right, and let's back up and talk about the schools, because that's where a lot of people are really concerned, and how I have no argument with the fact that there's something there, huge amount of something there to be concerned with. We don't know, as you said, how this is going to play out.
Hmm.
But when we're talking about the schools, when we're talking about housing children who are here, we have to understand there's law in place that governs this sort of thing. And because we don't like the outcome that we have now in this crisis, we can't be the people who decide that we only want rule of law to work when it benefits us. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, and I'm sad to say it, but it's the same attitude that we got out of Jenny Beth Martin last week at the middle of Mississippi Senate race, when she was saying, well, it's obvious that more Republicans voted for uh, McDonald's.
McDaniel.
So McDaniel, sorry, I keep doing that. McDaniel. So regardless of what the law says, he should be the candidate. We cannot do those sorts of things. We can't. We cannot be the people who say the rule of law only matters when it benefits us because it makes us equivalent to the other side, who love to use law when it benefits them and then love to agitate against it when it doesn't. So if there are laws in place that govern how long these children have to stay here, how they can be admitted into a family home of a relative or a close family friend or something like that, or whether someone takes them in, whatever the law may say, it does no good for us to complain about what the law is now. The object there is to fix that. And if that's an action that somebody wants to get involved in and take on the idea of what the laws are now and what they should be, then that's a conversation you have with your congressman and your senator. And that's how you push for those regulations to change. But you can't wish away the law as it is now. You cannot do it. It will not work, and it makes our side lose tons of legitimacy.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes us look like little children. It definitely does not, because right now it looks like a lot of us are just screaming and whining and complaining, and there's a way to change the law. There's absolutely a way to change the law, and that's with the ballot box in November. So get to your candidate's website and figure out what their stance is on the border crisis, and vote for them or don't, or support them or don't. That's how you do it.
And let's talk about that. When we talk about immigration as a problem, who has the authority to deal with that? Congress and the president. When we talk about things like the funding for the influx of children or people in general that are coming here and what the laws are and how they have to be handled and treated, who's in charge of that? The federal government. We have to take power away from the people who are so indulgent and willing to break all the laws to get what they want. And the only way to do that is to stay focused on federal elections in the long term. And anything that gets in the way between us winning back, say, the White House or the Senate, is something that we ought to look long and hard as to whether we ought to be involved in right now.
Democrats delenda est. That's it. I mean, we have to continue to repeat that mantra and focus on what the actual problem is, and it's getting Republicans into office. That's how we fix this mess. I'm sorry, that's how we got to do it. And it really, I mean, what good is it doing actually to go out there and say, no, who cares about these kids who are on the border or who are being housed? You know what? I don't care about their well-being. I don't care about any of that stuff. These guys are illegal invaders, and they're 8. Sure. Should they be here? No, they shouldn't. Does that mean that we are absolved of any and all? If an 8-year-old wanders around and finds himself on your doorstep, and they're clearly in bad shape, and you call and you call Child Protective Services and they say, hey, we can't get anybody over there until such and such a time. Are you just going to leave that kid outside and not help them? I mean, it's disgusting to me that we have so many people that are not able to figure out what it's a political issue, yes, but you also have to realize how it looks to the average independent or apolitical voter that that we're saying these things, that these things are being said, it's not my opinion. I don't hold that. I don't think that that's the case. We talked about John Cornyn, I don't know, 5 weeks ago, getting destroyed over this. People yelling and screaming their heads off because he had the gall to say, well, before we can send them back, we need to, take care of them.
We need to change their diapers.
It might
Rhino.
it might take a week or two before we can send them back, because, I mean, These are people. Can we just look at the problem here for a second? We're getting hundreds of thousands of people coming across the border, people who do not have records as far as we can tell. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they do, where they came from. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to send them back to wherever it is that they came from. Okay, so how are we going to do that? How are we going to determine who these people are, where they need to go, any of that stuff? It's really, 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 really ridiculously hard. Should that have been the case? Should we have a border fence? Should we have 7 border fences? Yeah, probably. But we don't. We have to deal with the situation as it is, not the way we want it to be. If we want to deal with the situation as we want it to be, we have to win first.
So, so do we, as a means of, I don't know, distracting and giving people something to do, turn our minds and our focus towards some of the Senate races where we can have a Republican pickup, and really put effort into that? Because right now it's July. We've got July, August, September, and October. We got 4 months before it's time to do what the stories are that we're going to take over the Senate, but only if we work at it, and we can take over the Senate really well if we work at it hard. And we need to, maybe that's something that we can do as a way to get people to just fill the pipeline with other stuff that is directed towards the goal and the purpose, which is putting Republicans in charge in the Senate so we can actually change some of these laws. Um, but in the meantime, we're also, maybe some people are looking at trying to figure out what the laws really are, because I think that in a crisis situation, we end up with a lot of well-meaning people, both working for the government and helping the government, who are doing the absolute best they can, and they're doing what they are told is the right thing to do. And as we can all assume, the people that are telling them what the law is are La Raza and the open borders specialists. Are there any people on our side looking at what the actual law is, trying to figure out within the rule of law, what is the best way we can handle this? What is the right way? What is the most compassionate way? What is the best for citizens and non-citizen alike? Is anybody on our side really looking at that and either writing a blog post about it, writing the stories, telling the truth, getting it out there? I mean,
You
I know
mean, and
Breitbart's doing
not,
a lot of work on what is happening, but are people doing a lot of work on what is really the best we could do within the law as it stands?
you mean without yelling and screaming their heads off about these darned illegal aliens stealing our jobs?
Right. We
Invasion.
have to just ignore those people. And it is an invasion, by the way. I mean, it's more people than were involved in the D-Day invasion. It is literally an invasion of this nation, but it just is, and we have to cope with it.
Pretty much. But no, I haven't seen anyone actually go through. I see a lot of stuff, like Cato came out with something recently about why the Tea Party is wrong on immigration, whatever. Getting into the issue of what's right and what's wrong as far as immigration reform goes, but not really anything talking about what currently is the law. So no, I don't know. I haven't seen anyone who's been giving any kind of argument other than send them back in their carts and stuff.
Right, and I have this to say about it. If we are going to make this something that sits just on Obama's plate, we are going to lose this issue, because we've had presidents going back years and years who haven't wanted to deal with this problem appropriately. And I understand it, that it's politically stupid in some cases to get involved in immigration at all, and that we have some cowards, I'm sure, in government, and the rule of law doesn't mean what it did before. I understand all that, but if we are going to make this about another thing Obama's done, another thing Obama's done, we are going to have our legs cut right out from under us, because his policies are not the only ones that are responsible here. If I'm not mistaken, some of the children were enacted under Bush.
Well, I think they're using and I haven't read about this, but I've heard that they're using a 2008 child sex trafficking law as the guiding principle of what they do with these children once they're here.
Right, and
Um,
I've got a list
Obama's
of
Dream
those.
Act. Dream Act is the magnet. The lack of enforcement, the lack of deportations, and the Dream Act of amnesty is the magnet that's drawing the people here. And the fact that he is tying the hands of the border agents, the rules of engagement that they have, and the fact that he and his predecessor did not actually build the fence that was mandated and funded. That's it is Obama's fault that they're here. What we're doing with them now that they are here, which is keeping them in Obama camps and putting them on buses and flying them around the country and sending tuberculosis all on a America tour 2014. That is a result of the convoluted laws that we are currently under, and that's the kind of stuff that where our hands are tied and what we do with them now that they're here is, yes, I think that's laws that are not just Obama's fault. And I don't know that I don't really care about blaming anyone as far as what's going to happen
No,
with them now that they're here.
you and I don't, but that's a
Yeah, but a
lot
lot
of
of
what we have to deal with. Right.
and I would
Go
like to
ahead.
keep the focus on it being Obama's fault that they're here, and
Right.
it's crappy immigration laws in general that dictate what we do with them now. I think
Well,
that
and
that seems like a
Yeah,
way we can split it.
I
Ryan
think you're
brings,
both right on that. Like, I mean, it's been an immigration problem for 30 years. Reagan gave amnesty, Democrats didn't hold their bargain, and it got worse, and we all know that. But
Hmm.
it got really bad a couple months ago when Obama said, "I'm not going to deport you."
Right.
There's source after source saying that, people from South America saying that as they come across the border. Like, I think we need to point out, look, if we have open borders, if we don't build a fence, if we say we're not going to deport you, look what happens. Look how bad these border cities are. We need the humane way to do it is to build a fence to enforce our border and allow more legal immigrants and make it easier for legal immigrants to come. Just letting our borders open, it's inhumane. I mean, point out how bad it is and what that effect had. I don't know. That's what I think.
well, and I think you made a good point too when you're talking about Mike Lee heading down to the border in our chat over here internal. One of the things I saw on, I think it was Mike Lee posted it on Facebook, is that comprehensive immigration is not an answer to this. And a lot of people want to talk about the immigration reform. That's a good thing to talk about. Immigration reform as a category is a good thing to talk about. But too many of the radio hosts or whatever have been saying, when you say immigration reform, what you mean is amnesty. We've got to divorce those ideas, because Mike Lee on his wall is talking about immigration reform when he says that you have to do it a piece at a time, that nobody trusts the federal government to do anything until the border is secured.
So what you're saying is
There's,
that we shouldn't have a one-size-fits-all solution to.
yeah, I don't think so. What we shouldn't have is a one-stop solution shop that says everything has to go in one bill. That's how we get screwed as a nation, is omnibus bills and comprehensive bills. We can't let that happen anymore. We've got to deal one item at a time. Immigration is a vast subject. Can we deal with one piece at a time and then go that way? It's not in the Democrats' interest to deal with immigration a piece at a time. It is in their interest to deal with it in a comprehensive manner. And that's another thing, an action item, here we go, that we can give anybody is to tell whatever elected official at the federal level that they can get in touch with that a comprehensive amnesty bill is not a starter. It's a non-starter completely, that you will never support a comprehensive amnesty bill whatsoever. That it must be done piecemeal, and it must be done by starting with the border issue. That's the best start, and that's something you can all of your elected federal officials and say that that is your concern, that no one trusts the federal government, no one trusts this administration to do what they're supposed to do, and so we need proof first, and that's in the form of a border deal without anything attached.
Right, because there is no trust. The trust has been burnt, lost, gone. I like that. That is a good action item. Are there are there action items and I that surround care for those that need it? Because we're putting poor kids and uh, hungry people, we're putting them on a bus and driving them around the country. I mean, that's like cattle cars, and it's overwhelming the system, and it's not decent, it's not humane, it's not kind. How can we help on that without also encouraging more of the same? I mean, it's a tricky deal.
Well, one of the things we know is that the Catholics are encouraging their members to help, to take in children and everything. And another thing people can do right now that will not only give them a better idea of what's happening, to do something toward mitigating the problem, at least from a human suffering perspective. Go find a Catholic church. You don't have to be a Catholic to help. Go find a Catholic church. Find out what the needs are. If there's a family that's taking in 2 or 3 children, ask them what they need. Find out who are the people that are doing this. Go to the church, ask them, and spend a little money maybe on some supplies, some food, something like that, and be a human being about it.
Holy crap! I mean, that's the thing that's absolutely it's insane to me that what we're demanding. Here's the thing. Let's go back. Let's think about this. We're talking about demanding big government solutions is what we're doing. We're essentially asking for the big government to come in and send these foreigners back. That's what we're asking for.
That is a responsibility that the federal government does have.
It absolutely is.
Yep, I'm with Fishy. That's
No,
the one.
it absolutely
I would rather, instead of sending them back, I would rather they not let them in the first place. But
Exactly.
I'm an originalist. What can I say?
No, exactly. But we're not at a point where we can get that done. It's one thing
Right.
to ask for it to get done, but we can't do that right now. It's ineffective.
Right. That's like
So,
after November at the earliest. So yeah, okay.
yes,
What can we do now?
once we have a Republican Senate and a Republican Congress, entirely, then we can do something about it. Then we can ask. Then we can demand or do whatever. But right now, it's not a situation where it's effective. So, I don't know. It's mind-boggling how short-sighted people can be when it comes to the situation on the border and the fact that these are actual people, these are little kids, and they've gone through hell, literally, to get here, and there's just a lot of bad stuff. There's a lot of bad angles to this, and we are just making them worse in a lot of.
And I think George just absolutely nailed it on the chat. If we get involved and really help with the Catholic churches, what we're demonstrating, we're proving, we're walking the walk that personal charity steps in where the government fails. And I would very much like for these new immigrants, these new future Americans, because once we know that once they get here, they're going to be here for the rest of their lives. What better way to introduce them to America than by being welcoming Americans who show up at the Catholic Church to help them out and start teaching them English as second language classes? Because my God, what better way to help them assimilate than to start teaching some English classes at your local community center or wherever?
Okay, so I have a question. That's a good idea, but what about, we haven't talked about the other part of the border security. While this flood of immigrants is there and our government's focused on taking care of these kids, what about all of the all the drugs coming across, the weapons coming across, the Al Qaeda, Hamas people coming across, MS-13 gang members, like they're all using this to sneak in. I mean,
Right.
it's an attack waiting to happen. That hasn't. I've hardly seen that discussed anywhere.
Right, and it probably won't be because on the left it's not worth them, bringing up the subject. They're not going to want to talk about it. And on the right, where the visual focus that you can prove is on the children, is on the people that are in these detention centers. All of the other stuff was still happening a long time ago. That's nothing new, but now it's getting made worse. It's getting exacerbated by the fact that we have people taking advantage from the South, taking advantage of this. I agree. This is a sticky mess. The things that we can do are deal with the people that we can help, at least in a humanitarian way, and with that perspective for the interim until the government's going to deal with this. But unless you can get a state to take authority away from the federal government to deal with the problem, and a governor or several governors decide to do something about it, then we are limited in what we can do. These are the things we can do. There's nothing I can do from here about a person in the drug cartel or trafficking weapons. That is the authority, under the authority of the federal government and to some degree the state governments, and they need to be dealing with that. And if it's by more money that needs to be addressing the problem, hiring more people, whatever. We don't want to start an industry, though, based solely around border protection.
No.
That's sucking off resources for the rest of our economy. So, we have to balance those things too. Yes, it's awful that we're having drug dealers and gun runners and horrible, horrible people coming across the border, but are we going to spend all of our money just putting up a human wall to deal with that? I don't know where the trade-off is and
Right.
whether it's worth to do that. So we got to talk about that too. As private citizens, though, the things that we can do are the things like helping these people individually.
And I think that actually becomes a force multiplier. I think part of the growth in the illegal alien immigrant and the children is driven by the cartels. The cartels are making money by transporting these children and by flooding the zone with those kinds of individuals that then leaves their areas unguarded so that they can get their drugs across more easily. So the cartels have a great economic incentive in driving a bunch of this business and helping the people in Honduras get all the way up to America, because it helps them. They make money from the family transporting the child and whatever kind of human trafficking and indentured servitude that kid's going to be in while they're in America, as well as the fact that that's a distraction for our Border Patrol and DHS, so that they can get the drugs through the tunnels and stuff like that. And if we as regular people provide some assistance on the back end for the humanitarian assistance, then that I think can free up some of the Border Patrol, because the Border Patrol is doing a lot of humanitarian assistance. And if we can step into the breach, that might allow them to step forward to the border and work hand in hand on the Texas border with DHS and stop and interdict some of this drug cartel stuff, because they've got us on the back end. It's like in a war, you recruit the civilians at the factories to make your bullets, so that the guys who were making the bullets go out on the front lines and start shooting the bullets. And if we're trying to help and take care and do some of this humanitarian stuff, it might be a helpful thing, because I could drive down to the Rio Grande Valley and stand there, but I'm not really going to be any help. But if I can be teaching somebody English or carrying diapers to some poor kid, then that means maybe a Border Patrol agent can be standing there at the border with his gun saying, "No, Mr. Drug Cartel guy, you cannot cross."
What are you talking about, Leslie? That makes absolutely no sense. I heard that there are a bunch of guys going to the border, and they're going to be like standing there, and it's going to be really effective. And
The Minutemen, woo!
yeah.
Let's see what George has to say. I'm really curious.
Please.
He's got some ideas here.
He's muted, though. Unmute yourself, George. George? Oh no.
Frozen too. Oh wait, no, he's
He's
moving.
not frozen. He just can't. He
He's
apparently can't.
concentrating.
He's like super mute, where he's muted us.
Yeah. Well, before. Yeah. I guess I would love to. I would love to hear what George is trying to say, but it is not.
Okay, and Ryan says on our background chat that all of my war metaphors really scare him. I do use a lot of war metaphors, don't I? It's
Can
just
you hear
because
us at
this.
all, George?
Well, you made the point
There we
you
go.
made the point, Fishy, about that we can't really take away the authority.
Oh,
And
no. I didn't. I
no,
said I want to make sure somebody does, and if they have the political will and the
can you
balls
hear
to
me?
do it.
Because I can hear you, but I can't hear you on the Google Hangout, I guess.
Weird.
Damn it.
I can hear you, George.
I have. Okay. Oh shoot. Okay, I'm sorry. Fish. Uh, okay, I can't hear you unless I've got the other window open. That's the problem. That's the problem. Is that for whatever reason I can't hear you unless I've got the other window open with the YouTube chat. So let me make this
See, we
point,
got all of our
and I
technical
apologize if
issues
I'm
taken
stepping all
care
over
of.
people,
We got
but
all
I'll
of our
try to make
technical
it.
issues taken care of in our first couple
We
of
need to have.
episodes. George
How do
is
the
late.
states take the authority away? This is it, Fishy. And it's got to be the red states: Louisiana, Alabama, Oklahoma, Nebraska, places with Republican governors and with churches and other organizations like them that want to help and say, you know what, we'll take care of these kids until, Mr. President, you either decide to deport them or decide to do something else. And just wait and see what happens if the president actually tries to stop them. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because I think what would happen is I think his own base would go crazy, and I think that's what could change the conversation.
This is what I'm concerned with. If these people are in federal custody right now, I don't know how you take responsibility for them and get it away from the federal government without state support. My question has always been, do the governors, do the states have the balls to deal with that? And provided, say, that Texas and New Mexico and Arizona did, what if California does not?
So George, I'm wondering with your point, are you kind of saying that the Democrats want them to come in and they want the votes and the workers, and if the Republicans take them, care for them, they're going to be more likely to vote Republican, and Obama might try to stop them because of that? Is that kind of where you were going with that?
He can't hear you again. He's listening to the delayed stream is what's going on. So before we continue on, I guess that's something that we should fix. I'm going to chat with him on Facebook. So let's change the subject for a second. Ryan,
Well,
if
I mean,
you never
okay,
mind.
that's why I wanted to confine it to the red states.
That's
Because
what I thought you meant. I just wanted to check.
That's
right
cool.
now,
Okay. Let's let JD
yes.
and George figure out their audio technical issues, and I don't know how they're going to do that while they're on the call and talking to each
I'll
other.
I
I'll,
think
I'll
And
it's
message him
more a
on
case
Facebook.
of
okay, JD and George will figure it out, and they'll let us know
yeah.
when they're synced back up, because that delay is probably 5-10 seconds, and you think watching Fox News on a satellite delay feed is annoying. Ugh. Yeah, 5-10 seconds is even worse. I think I'm on board with George's idea, though, and that is the Republican governors, and he, on purpose, I'm assuming, did not even mention Texas as a red state. Duh, but that's okay. Yeah, Fishy and I we understand that when anybody's talking about red states and an immigration issue, Texas is just assumed. Um,
Yes.
we know that's number one on the list with a bullet. But I think what he's talking about, and I'm totally on board with the idea, kind of the 10th Amendment takeover, and it's even more than that. Not just us do what the federal government is not allowed to do, but us do what the federal government is refusing to do, and just stepping in and taking the power back because they're not exercising it. And I imagine that I'm guessing that Rick and Bobby Jindal and Jan Brewer, and I don't know the name of the governor of Oklahoma, the Republican governors, I'm guessing that they've been talking about this. And
Mm-hmm.
in my imagination, in my dreams, they're having war sessions of how to do a takeover and make it be basically a hostile takeover of their states and to protect their people, because they have a responsibility. Rick Perry has a primary responsibility to take care of me, a resident of his state. And Barack Obama is getting in the way of him being able to do that job. And I would hope that pisses him off.
Yes, yes. I agree there, and I just have to say, this is where the 10th Amendment stuff gets really sticky.
Yeah, it does.
Because if the federal government has authority and it's not performing the duty, that's not the same as a state having authority because the federal government doesn't.
Right.
And I'm sure it's giving them all fits.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, the states have to say, the federal government is not doing the job. It's not doing it efficiently, effectively, or at all in some cases. So we must intervene. How are we going to navigate that politically? Because it does have to be navigated politically, sadly.
And it has to be the thing that the needs of my citizens trumps your desire to not enforce the law. I mean, and that then becomes a nasty legal battle. And it becomes the kind of thing that civil wars are fought over, just so you know how serious this can be.
And that's
because
what
we're
I think
talking
Ryan,
some serious stuff.
I think that's what Ryan is attempting to talk about when he's mentioning Cloward Piven.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just a real quick check. George, can you hear us in real time now? Thumbs up? There
Yay!
we go. We're fixed.
Well done.
Way to go. Way to go. And I would love to see it happen. And I think George is right in the aspect of it, because what we've seen so far is the Republican governors wanting to take over on the standpoint of border security, and doing the federal government's job because the federal government's not doing it. And we've seen Obama and his minions push back. I mean, they're suing Jan Brewer, and they're doing a lot of really ugly things to try to keep the states from protecting their citizens. But it sounded to me like George was saying that maybe some of the overstepping that the states do is not so much on the border security, but on some of the interior enforcement stuff and the interior taking care of the people. And that then becomes a political mess for the other side. Because if the Democrats don't want us to do their job, they're telling us not to take care of people.
Yes.
If we can find some way that the federal things that we take over from them because they're such a failure at is the good stuff. Not the bad stuff that they don't want to do, but the good stuff that they're crappy at, which is transporting people and feeding people and doing all of those things. And if we just start doing that because, hey man, you suck, we've got better canteens and better kitchens and better churches, and you guys are not doing it, so just back off. We're going to do this instead. And then that's the little seed of the state rebellion, because
Yes.
that's the power base that we start at in taking over and doing what the feds aren't doing.
And
We take that,
imagine,
and then we just do a little more, little more, little more.
and imagine this. Imagine that the GOP governors say, we're going to help these kids. We're going to take care of them. We're going to dispatch, we got churches, we've got these organizations that want to help. And the president tries to say, no, you can't do that because it's a violation of separation of church and state. Or the ACLU or some of these other people say, you can't take care of these kids. You can't help them. You can't give them shots or get them to a doctor or whatever else needs to be done because you're a church and you're going to indoctrinate them or whatever it's going to be. Just imagine how that's going to look to the voters, to swing voters, to Hispanic voters, to other voters. How is that going to look to their own base?
I have
Who
one
wants all these
caveat.
kids to stay?
I have one caveat about that. I do not think the federal government and Obama et al. Are going to come at it from, you're going to indoctrinate these people. I think they're going to come at it from, you don't meet federal standards
Now, the
for
hell with
taking care
federal
of people.
standards, though. I mean,
Right.
if they
Right.
try
You
to
and I
stop it,
feel that.
it's going to
You
look
and I
terrible.
feel that. But a lot of people are going to say, well, it doesn't come up to the standards of blah, 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 and therefore it's illegal because you're not certified to blah, blah, blah. And then it becomes that sort of thing. The way that it's messaged around that is, this is an emergency. We were not worried about regulations when a bunch of people came into Houston after Katrina. We were worried about humans and the best way that we could to take care of them. And so if we're approaching it from that perspective, we might be able to dodge that bullet, but I will tell you that is what's going to come up.
And Mattress Mac got all the stuff to the Astrodome way before FEMA was even in the state. And we can do, if we approach it from that perspective again and say, look, hey, federal government, if you want to cut us a check to reimburse us later, that's fine. But we're not sending you money that you would then turn around and send to us because we're doing the job. We'll just take it out of what we would send you. We'll send you the bill. And by the way, back the hell off. And that can be the seeds of the rebellion.
I certainly hope that would be the tactic that they take. I would be overjoyed if we had governors who banded together and decided that was going to be their policy across many states, and every one of them challenged the federal government to sue them for the difference, that sort of thing. I would be ecstatic if that constitutional question would happen, because the remedy for that is a lawsuit way down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But the practical application of it is right now.
Well, I mean, we are in a situation where Jan Brewer, Susana Martinez, Rick Perry, that's it. That's the border. That just leaves California. So we have quite a lead over there. I don't know. Those are people we can talk to. Those are people we can communicate with. I don't know if it's going to do anything, but
right.
It's a plan. It's certainly something that you don't see very much of as far as actual solutions or actual things that we can do. This could be something that you get people to do. If you want to fix the situation, tell your governor to do this. Tell your governor to join on this line.
I'm going to go, seems like off topic, but it's not really. Stick with me on this one. This ride is going to be worth it, I promise you. Okay, so this weekend I was at my family's house back home, and we were talking about my brother. They had all just seen my brother. My brother is 11 years older than I am, and has been working all his life in oil and gas, and has been a geologist, and he's got this, the great career. He's doing really well for himself, and he moved in to my area, not after years in West Texas, moved into my area in a really beautiful house with a lot of land way out west of me, about 20 minutes further west. I'm already in the suburbs. He's in the exurbs. And he has, a commute down a toll road to get into town, all that sort of thing. But it's a really nice, quiet sort of living that they have out there. But my sisters told me that what he was saying when they visited with them is how horrible it is that people want to keep moving out and sprawling in these areas that they sprawl in, because in the city there's already existent infrastructure, but every time a new community goes up outside of a neighborhood, outside of a city, out in the exurbs, they have to truck in all of the infrastructure. They have to put in water and lines and sewer and power and everything, and it's this big investment that they wouldn't have to make, and their taxes would be lower if people were living in the cities. Okay, my sister said, well, to him, I imagine that a lot of people feel like you do, and really like the idea of living out here in the nice, quiet, peaceful area where there aren't a lot of neighbors, and really enjoy having all this land that you can plant all these things on, and having a horse in your backyard if you choose. And the point was, he didn't even see what he was saying, because his mindset was, I know better what other people ought to do, but this is my choice, and you'd better not mess with it. And that comes all the way back around to what happens if, say, California decides not to go along with this policy and deal with the problems on a state level and just let it stay in the federal government. But the other states are successful in doing so. You're going to have all of the traffic routed to the far west corner of the United States on the southern border. And all the people who say that they ought to be, all these Californians who say, oh, we ought to open the borders, we ought to, have as many people, whatever, they're going to be dealing with the problem in a very real way. And right now, they're like my brother. They don't see that their choices are different. They're living out, San Francisco, out that way. They're having all these liberal enclaves. They don't have to deal with the border business. But the border area is very real. And if that starts coming into their area, if my brother had new divisions built right in his backyard 20 miles down the road, and that became the suburbs instead of the exurbs, it would become very much more real to him. So all that to say, some of the application of the plan that George was talking about would have some very real effects for people who don't deal in reality very often.
There's nothing like a sharp dose of reality to change your thinking on subjects. That would be nice. It would absolutely be a good thing to deal with reality. And actually, since we're talking about reality and stuff, I don't know. It might be a bit of a sharp turn here, but I would love to hear a little bit more of what George has to think about the impeachment situation, because reality is what we're trying to talk about. And George, you know about this stuff. You paid a lot of attention during the 90s.
Yes, I lived it because I was a college student, and I was foursquare behind impeachment. The president suborned perjury. He lied under oath. And I'll admit, I hated his guts and I wanted him gone. So I was like, yes, he's committed these high crimes and misdemeanors. He deserves to be impeached. We at the time had the House and the Senate. This was a principled stand that we should make. So we go through the hearings, and everybody finds out. I mean, those hearings got big ratings. I know that because even at college, even people that didn't want to pay attention to anything to do with politics were watching these things. So everybody got to hear what the deal was, and everybody knew what he did and because it was boiled down to, well, it was all about sex and everybody lies about sex, they decided, no, we don't want to throw him out of office. And
the prudish Republicans can't handle sex.
Well, there was that too. But the point is this: I'll never forget it because it was right before Christmas, and I'm watching with my grandparents, and Bob Livingston strides to the lectern, to the podium at the front to give his speech during the impeachment debate. And he's going to be the next speaker, and I'm all excited because I wasn't very happy with Newt at that point. And I'm like, Bob Livingston was the Appropriations Committee chairman, principled guy, helped cut spending, helped cut taxes. Great, he's going to be our speaker. And he's giving his point about why the president should be impeached. And the Democrats start yelling across the chamber like this is England or something where you can yell at people and say, you resign, and then he went and did it like 5 seconds later and said, because of what I did, because his past had been dug up and he'd had an affair with somebody or other. Larry Flynn had dug that up with Hustler. And then he says, I resign. And I kind of sat there and we're all shocked. My grandmother and my grandfather and I were all kind of frozen for a moment, and I said, no, that was not what's supposed to happen here. You're not supposed to quit. We need you. What are you doing? But it made the point, and it probably turned the impeachment thing around for a few weeks, but ultimately it was forgotten. And then we know what happened when it got to the Senate. Trent Lott basically killed the thing because he wanted it to go away because he thought he'd lose the Senate over it. And that was it. And we went through all this crap, all this nonsense. Newt quit. Bob Livingston quit. And we ended up with Dennis Hastert as the Speaker, which was an unmitigated disaster for the president, for that Republican Congress, because at that point they went completely off the rails and stayed off of it until they all got thrown out in 2006. And if I could take it back, if I could take it all back, I would. If I could put that genie back in the bottle, I would. It killed us. It's killed us big time. We haven't recovered from it. Look at what's happened. Look at all the spending. Look at who got elected as a result. I mean, we went from Newt's Congress, which passed welfare reform, which is probably the most important piece of legislation that's been passed in the last 35 years, to be perfectly honest, and the best piece of legislation, the only one that's that's cut the size of government and done something about poverty, which is the overriding problem that we can't fix despite trillions of dollars spent on it. And now we went from that to let's spend, let's pork, let's earmark, let's do campaign finance reform and Medicare Part D and all this other stuff that we did under the Bush administration, and then all the other things that we're complaining about now that we could have fixed and didn't, like oil drilling and immigration reform and all that. That's what happened, and it started back with impeachment, and it was a fool's errand because, as you said, it got boiled down to, well, it's all about sex, and everybody lies about sex, and you Republicans are just prudes anyway. What the hell is wrong with you? That's what it boiled down to, and it cost us everything.
Right. And that is a point that I think we need to explore too, because what you get when you talk about this around that is from our side, from people on our side, is breaking the law is breaking the law. Not enforcing law is not enforcing law. And if the president is not doing his job, then we are compelled by our duty to remove him. And it doesn't matter if it's an unpopular thing to do. It doesn't matter if it's something that's going to hit us politically. Where are your balls, sir? That's what you keep getting. And I think it's from people just not politically aware. They are. It goes back to my whole self-indulgent argument that so many people just want to say what they want to say, and they think the words have power and meaning, and they will go out and accomplish things. And unfortunately, the world does not work that way.
And I will raise my hand on that because until I started meeting some of you people, I was the same way. I just wanted to smash the living hell out of the opposition, damn the consequences, and let's go on. Sorry about that, Fishy. I meant to say y'all instead of you people. Now she's calling me racist in chat. That's just great. I want to make this point. I want to make this point, and I had a long debate with somebody about this very thing on Facebook, somebody who I respect as a conservative, who's living in what would be conservative hell, which is New York. God help him. It's a fool's errand. Let's pass it in the House. Yes, we got the votes. We can vote to charge him, to impeach him. It wouldn't even get to the floor of the Senate to have the trial. We wouldn't come close to conviction. At least in the 90s, there were probably 10 or 11 Democrats that if we really fought for it, might have voted yes, and we might have gotten close. There might be 2 now, and that's being generous. 2 is probably the high number.
There's probably 2 Republicans that would vote against it.
Yeah, and there would be Republicans that probably vote against it. I think there were a couple that voted against it even then. So why are we going to put ourselves through this? Why are we going to fire up their base, which is as depressed as it's ever been? Why are we going to make him look like a martyr, which is not going to help us? Although you could argue that he's already trying to make that play in the media, and I don't think it's worked to this point, but I think something like this too, and also too, why are we going to take the election out of the issues that are winning issues for us, which is that Obamacare is a mess, the foreign policy is a complete disaster,
And the
he's
economy is
incapable of running a government. He's not only is he incapable of running a government, he's got people in the Senate like Harry Reid who are blocking bills, who are doing everything they can to cover for him, who are going on the Senate floor and talking about climate change and the Washington Redskins nickname because they're trying to distract from everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the Koch brothers. And the Koch brothers.
the
Remember
Koch brothers, yes, and slandering regular citizens because they dare want to take part in the electoral process. We have to get this guy out of power, Harry Reid. We have to knock him out of that majority leader seat. And the biggest reason is that without the ability to spread pork that power gives him as the majority leader, Nevada will probably kick him out in 2016.
Oh, that would be a beautiful thing.
And it can happen because you've got Brian Sandoval, who I think is going to win re-election and is probably going to run against him. If Harry Reid's not the majority leader and he can't deliver the kind of pork that he's been delivering, they'll vote his tail out. I'm convinced of that, and we can get that seat in 2016. So that's the biggest thing is if you knock him out of that spot as the majority leader, you can knock him out of the Senate 2 years later, and that senile old so-and-so can be gone forever.
Okay, so I have a question that's kind of a tangent to this, but you're talking about the reality of not being able to impeach him. We don't have enough votes. People talk like impeachment's a good thing. Hey, let's do it. Let's put our principles out there. But reality, it's just going to rally the base. It's not worth it. And I've been reading a lot of articles this week that I'm sure most of you have read because I think they've been shared by you guys and Pradeep and stuff. And they all seem to talk about, Democrats have great motivations and great ideas, but when it comes to reality, none of it works. Sure, it's a great ideal that we do this, but when the policy, minimum wage, it's a great ideal that everyone should make this, and everyone should make a living wage, but when it comes down to it, it hurts the people that it's supposed to help every time, and every study shows that. So maybe this is a thing for Andy when he's here, but how do we message that? How do we get people to see reality, whether it's liberals or moderates, to see how those policies hurt and don't do anything, or our own people to see what's possible? And I don't know.
Are you saying that impeachment is not a reality, you rhino?
Nice. Now, I've been itching to get in on this one, and I think it ties into what I was going to say after what George said. What people have to understand about impeachment is that you can't do it without popular support. There has to be a movement, and I think this was addressed in the ACE piece that dealt with this today, about there was a lot of media pushing, leftists pushing, Democrats pushing. There was a target on Richard Nixon, and when he was impeached, the country was willing. And they were very willing. And that applied in the reverse when it came to Clinton. The country was not willing, and the people were not behind it, and the media was not behind it. And you cannot get it done politically without that support. And what you're asking people to do by trying to build that case is to have people admit that they were wrong about Barack Obama. And that is a very difficult thing. His approval ratings may not be the best as far as the job performance, but they like him. They still identify in some way with him because that was what the campaign was. He was a guy you'd like to hang out with. He was a guy who was cool. He was a guy who was relatable. He was more like people in the country than Romney was. That is the dynamic that's out there. And when you come at people with the impeachment talk and not sensible talk about what to do, but the impeachment talk, he's got to go, you are telling people to their faces, you're an idiot because you voted for this guy. And I see that kind of messaging all the time, and it doesn't help because a person who's married, only partly to a viewpoint, when you start attacking them and telling them how foolish they are, the first thing they're going to do is entrench themselves.
Right.
That is not going to help.
We have to let them save face, and I think with the impeachment talk, it's become shorthand because most people only remember back to Bill Clinton's impeachment, if they even remember back that far. Most people just think of the word impeachment is that's what you do to a president you don't like. Because there was a lot of talk of let's impeach President Bush. We don't like President Bush, let's impeach him. We don't like Barack Obama, let's impeach him. That's not what you do. There was an article that Brian Preston wrote at PJ Media, and he outlined the 4 different things that you can do within the law when the president exceeds his authority. And he ran through all of them and why none of them will actually work. But one of them was obviously impeachment. And though that is a process that is technically a legal, procedural, legislative solution in that it's a trial in the House and Senate, or it's a vote in the House and a trial in the Senate, whatever the hell, that's actually a political solution done by politicians only with the will of the people behind them. But there is a solution that John Boehner is currently pursuing, and that's the lawsuit by the House of Representatives. And I think I'm okay with Boehner pursuing that because it's kind of quietly in the background, and it is okay. There are 4 things that Brian Preston outlined that you can do. These 3 we can't. This last one we actually can because it's done by the House, and the Republicans have the House. So since that's all we can do, we should, because it's one way to at least get it out there on paper that the things this president is doing are wrong and we should never allow it to happen again. So as long as it kind of stays there in the background and is something that's done by Boehner and the lawyers, I'm cool with that. I don't want the impeachment talk.
And here's the thing, even with the Boehner lawsuit, have you heard any of the media coverage about it?
No, that's fine.
No. There's media coverage about it. Would this have ever happened to a white president?
Oh,
No.
sure.
Have ever happened to a white president? Everything, you can go
So
down.
what? The orange guy is suing the brown guy? I mean, how is that racist?
Well, and here's the thing too: the "so sue me" response that we're getting is actually a pretty clever thing on his part, and that'll last among the people. But he's 12 losses and several unanimous losses at the Supreme Court. By the time this sort of thing takes its way through the system, we'll be past the halfway point of his second term.
Sure.
But it's good to force the issue for this president, because we're going to have another one down the road that we're going to have to deal with that too. So yeah, he may be getting a little play with the "so sue me" response, but the Supreme Court is not afraid to strike him down.
Yeah, and I do think it's important that Boehner have the lawsuit out there, because we need to, at least, put a line in the sand and say we will do what we can as we're marking our time to get you the hell out of here in 20 whatever it is, 2016. I guess he's gone. 2017.
Right.
And 2016 he's going to be, or 20. What is this? 2014. Oh my God! Somebody give me a calendar stat. In 2014 his power is going to be reduced, and he's going to be a caged animal for the last 2 years. Things are going to get very, very bad because he's going to do stuff by executive order, and he will whine and moan about absolutely everything. But speaking of that, "so sue me," John Hayward, I guess, did a compilation of 10 different statements that Obama made through the years, and it was a transition of Obama's style, where he started with, "This is going to be a new world, and it's going to be peaceful and fluffy bunnies, unicorns, and rainbows," transitioning all the way to "so sue me." And it really, when you look at those 10 statements one after the other with a date on them, it really painted a picture of a guy who is absolutely going from being a nice guy to a complete jerk. And that's one of the things that I wanted us to be able to put together in a slideshow or a GIF, not a GIF, but a GIF. That is, and it can be something. It could be something as simple as quotes on a black background that transition from 1, 2, 3, and it would be even greater if we could have like imagery where the first one, it's his quote over, a shining sun and a beautiful field, and then the image gradually morphs into, a dystopian landscape with "So sue me" as the final statement. So you can kind of see the transition of Obamaism. I mean, I can visualize what I want out of those 10 quotes in my head, but I can't get anybody to make it, and I'm certainly not the graphics person.
Huh. Well, and I got to say one more thing on Sosumi, too. It is important if Boehner and that suit is what I think it is, it's establishing standing to sue the president and the
Mm-hmm.
federal government to do or perform certain things or to cease doing certain things. One of the most difficult challenges we've ever had in dealing with any Congress or any president in terms of things they shouldn't be doing, but they're going to do them anyway, is establishing standing. And that is the point here. If Boehner can establish standing, that the Congress has a redress against the president, that's not just vote him out the next time around, then that helps us all the more, not just now, not just in the immediate, but long term.
Forever.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's very important, and I think it's important that it kind of happen under the radar. And Boehner is smart enough to know that he's going to be called a racist every step of the way. But as long as we're not making that big of a thing of it, but just quietly supporting it and letting it happen, it can just happen on the back end, and that can be something that I think is a long-term good. But we have to get people to shut the hell up about impeachment, because that's not helping
Mm.
us in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that was
Does
the
it help the conservative movement? No.
that was the point that I was trying to make, was even something as small comparatively as as just trying to establish standing, with a lawsuit, that's that's being called racist. That's being called, a huge, ridiculous thing that only is happening because we have these racist Tea Partiers and racist Republicans, in office, and that's the entire reason it's occurring. Just imagine the storm of crap that would happen as soon as somebody offers impeachment. As soon as that happens, as soon as that comes up on the table, it would be a nightmare, because we already talked about, you know the complicit media, all that fun stuff. You want to talk about how fast a president's popularity can switch from negative to positive? We can talk about how fast a president's popularity can switch from negative to positive. The second that you start an impeachment hearing, the second that you start that, is the second that every single possible good thing that he has ever done is going to be popping up everywhere, and there will be absolutely no climate for, yeah, talk about climate change. There you go. There would be no climate for impeaching Obama in that situation. It just wouldn't happen. So,
Well, and this is not to say that journalists aren't catching on. You remember back during the breaking of the NSA scandal, journalists were getting that. There were news organizations that had had their phones, tapped, their calls monitored, whatever it was, and they were a little bit upset at that. And to that end, I'm going to put this in the chat. There's a Twitchy article out. Journalists say stifling of free expression is happening despite Obama's pledge. And apparently a bunch of journalist organizations, 38, signed a letter to the president, complaining about his excessive restriction of public information from reporters. That is a good sign. And if we take this impeachment bandwagon and start getting on it, that all that good work there goes away. All that positive, journalists are a little bit skeptical. Maybe they're not going to make his last 2.5 years kind of comfortable anymore. That's
But
going
they
to be
will step
gone.
forward to defend their man against impeachment. You
Absolutely.
betcha.
If he's doing something to tick them off, let's not get in the way of that.
Right?
Well, they're going to turn on him anyway because once Hillary throws him under the bus, they got to help her.
But
You think?
again, that's gonna be a difficult call. I don't know that Hillary's going to be able to command that kind of loyalty that he has. It's going to be a difficult transition. They might resignedly support her, but I don't think they would do that at the cost of his legacy.
And it's going to be really, really hard to walk in two directions at the same time because you can't be pro Obama, pro Hillary, but that's what they're going to have to do because they're two distinctly different ideas and views on how to govern. So there's gonna be a lot of confusion. If there's one thing that I beg of us not to do is get in the way of them being confused, them being disorganized and disoriented going into 2016. That's not something that we need to do. That's not something that we should ever even think about. Let's not get in the way of them, hurting themselves because that's all they're capable of doing with that situation. So,
And
no
it's
impeachment,
beautiful.
just let them do it.
It's beautiful in a way because what the Hillary camp is facing right now are stories coming out about things that she or her husband have said about Barack Obama. It doesn't make her look good
No,
for
it
those
doesn't.
quotes to be out. And the media is going to have some serious, complications dealing with that. There's some cognitive dissonance they're going to have to work through about who's loyal, where does the loyalty lie? Obama's going to lose power inevitably by 2017 just due to the political cycle, and somebody else will be on the throne, as it were. But if that's the case, is that somebody that is going to have looked so bad? Are they going to really push hard for somebody that's done that? It's delicious. Let's let them eat that.
Yeah, because the Clintons and the Obamas hate, hate, hate each other. And I like that because the Clintons are ruthless power players, and you know that most of the media and the political establishment is going to feel like they need to back the Clintons because they could end up, dead or at least politically dead if you cross the Clintons. Um, yeah, I feed conspiracy theories
Hmm.
because it's fun. Why not? Um, but then, they really want to back Obama because they've got 8 years invested in Obama and everything he stands for. And if you end up with Elizabeth Warren as the continuation of the Obama campaign, which I think is what they're setting up, I think that's what Elizabeth is setting herself up as, Obama's, I don't know, next step or next phase, although she's old enough to be his mother. Um, And I think, and that'll be awesome, is if we have Elizabeth Warren against Hillary Clinton, two old ladies against whoever the Republicans have, who will be considerably younger than any of them. See that?
One would hope.
It's going to be awesome that our candidates will all be younger than Hillary and Elizabeth, or it's Hillary and Biden. It's like, Fishy's face. I love that. Yeah, JD, you have got to screenshot that.
Everybody messes with Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Qantas never crashed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh
But
my.
that's gonna be fun, and we're gonna have to. It's gonna be hard for our people to just stay out of the way
Yes,
as the
restraint is
media and
difficult.
the establishment tries to figure out. Okay, the only thing we can agree on is that the Republicans are wrong. That's the only thing we can agree on because
I'm
they don't.
just I'm just going to call it right now that we're going to still spend our time on the right doing the candidate hero go round,
Oh
and
God.
we keep knocking down our best guys until they're so damaged that they're going to have a hard time against whoever the Democrat puts up, whoever's the last one standing. And I would
Yes.
just implore people, can we not do that this time? Just maybe a little self-restraint. Yes,
Well,
you may have to suck up somebody you don't like as a candidate, but can you let them just destroy themselves? And then we'll deal with how to hold our guy accountable.
let's remember where some of that fire came from. Mitt Romney and I don't disagree with who've said this in the past. Mitt Romney was tougher on Rick Perry and some of his own Republican opponents than he was on President Obama. So and believe you me, Chris Christie and Jeb Bush, if they both run, God help us, they will be the same way. So let's remember something: when they come after, they do like to come after the Tea Party and say how awful Tea Party folks are at attacking their own, but they're pretty darn vicious, as we saw in Mississippi, and that's where a lot of that fire is going to come from that end of the party, and not necessarily the grassroots end of the party.
I wouldn't say that there, George. There's a lot coming from both sides.
Oh no, there is, but believe me, Mitt Romney fired first the last time, and Jeb Bush and Chris Christie will fire first and fire hard this time. I have no doubt about that.
I seem to remember vulture capitalism being a phrase that somebody came up with. Vulture capitalism. I recall.
No, I remember that. That made me
ugly. Yeah, who said that one?
I believe it was Rick Perry.
That was not good. That was not good.
No, it wasn't. So
I just want to keep our people, our voters, away from the hero-loser dichotomy.
Yes.
How about we say this politician seems to be a good, promising politician. Oh, okay, maybe he's not the best. We take it from like a positive one to a negative one. Because we went from, last time, we were like, positive 10, oh, negative 10. And you either were absolutely in love with the guy and wanted to have his babies, or you hated him and wouldn't cross the street to save his life. And that's insane, people. They're politicians. No politician is ever going to be a plus 10. At best, they're going to be a 7. At best.
7 is still pretty high.
Yeah,
Well,
just
I got one that's higher than a 7 in my book. He's a plus 10 in my book.
Who?
Shut up, shut up, shut up. I don't want to hear it.
Okay.
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
I
Bobby
don't.
Jindal.
No, I love Bobby Jindal, but he's not the one. The one is Scott Walker. That's
Wow.
the one.
I'm sorry,
That
I
is
was
the
so
one.
asleep.
That runs counter to some of the other stuff that we've heard here. We've actually
Right.
had discussions on Scott Walker and his viability as a candidate. A lot of people bringing up his lack of charisma or whatever.
Well,
Boring might be an asset this time.
he's a
who
regular
knows?
guy, and that's how he won his first governor election. Was I'm the guy in a pickup truck with a brown bag that goes to work every day.
I remember that.
And he did it. And here's the thing: if he wins this November, which he will, he'll have won 3 statewide elections in a blue state and has completely turned the blue state around. And that's the other thing we actually need is our own transformational president. Except he's going to transform the country back to what it's supposed to be and not what it's being turned into.
I don't like that messaging, quite frankly. That's something
Okay.
else I wanna talk about is the idea of us going back to the way things were, or anything like that. Because I think that I don't think that helps. I think that we want to get better going forward. I think that the dominoes example that Rand Paul brought up during CPAC was a good one, of acknowledging the bad crust, acknowledging the stuff that wasn't right, that didn't go well, and move forward in a more positive direction and change the, instead of saying, let's go back to the good old days of Reagan or go back to the good old days of whenever. Let's find some new good days. Let's try.
Yeah, let's move forward to something new and exciting. Yay!
But what I mean is that instead of doing what we're doing now, which is transitioning into this Leviathan quasi-socialist, quasi-social democracy that we can't fund, let's head back towards free market capitalism, because that's what works.
Again,
Well, you can't say that way.
I agree with what you're saying. I agree with going to free market capitalism, but the messaging, from a messaging standpoint, saying going back to something is never,
Okay.
it's not I think helpful. I think, go forward. We are a people that, we want to have freedom. We want to have the ability to,
We need to
make a product.
decentralize. We need to, because centralization is all one size fits all. We can decentralize and let everybody customize the way they do things and let everybody have their own individual freedom.
Have it
Which
your
is the
way
same
a good
message.
slogan.
It's the
Yes.
same message as giving people more freedom. It's the same message as, unleashing the economy. It's the same message as making entrepreneurs' lives easier, but it's just phrased a completely different way in a dynamic that reaches people who hear free market capitalism and they zone out because they were sleeping on their desk in Econ 101.
Right.
Exactly. That's the thing, and you have to deal with that. It's would it be better if we had a more, economically sound electorate? Would that be better if we had people who had read a book by Thomas Sowell, and that every voter had to read this? Would it be great if they did? Yeah, sure, that would be fine. That would be great. We would have a whole different
At this
situation.
point, I just want
But
them to
that's
have an
not the
ID.
case. That's not the case. They don't do that. We have to figure out how to take these concepts that we know are great, that we know are correct, and we need to say them in ways and make people understand them in ways that are, easy, that are relatable, that are, things that, you understand when a restaurant in your area, gets rated by uh, the USDA because they had an ingredient there that's on a list because it's an anticoagulant, and oh my God, how could you have this there because it's no. They know what they're doing with. These are experts. These guys know what they're doing with the ingredients that they have, and they're coming into a restaurant. They're rating your raw milk because they know better than you. You want to go and you want to have these products. You want to do that stuff, and they're taking away your choices. They're taking away your options. That's how we need to approach it. We need to approach it by the fact that in California you aren't able to. You aren't allowed to have foie gras on your menu because why? There are things that we can do to illustrate exactly what government is doing to limit your freedoms, to limit what you can do, and that's not what we stand for. And we need to be able to articulate that in a way that is understandable.
I like that. Limited government, unlimited possibilities. That's a trademark, Felicia Cravens.
Thank you very much. But that is the concept that we need to
Great.
get to
That's
people.
that's what's going to be on Kevin Williamson's article tomorrow.
Yes.
Limited government, unlimited possibilities.
Yes.
Tweet
That
it to
is the
'em.
concept. How can we tell that story when we go through and we look at the places where government is squashing people? And again, we've talked about the victim card and flipping it on the left. This is a
Mhm.
great opportunity, and I wish every candidate would think about this. How do you structure that this government, this massive thing that's got no face except a bunch of bureaucrats in suits and whatever, if you paint the government as this monolithic entity that's out of a dystopian novel almost, in the way that they swoop down and they cause difficulty and harm and frustration and real costs to real people, and we're talking in that dynamic, we don't need to use the word Obama. We don't even need to use the word Democrat very often, but we can keep talking about government failing. What we have in this country is an assumption that government is basically good and does good things. Harry Reid said that on the floor of the Senate, and that he was criticizing the Tea Party in doing so, saying that all of us were anarchists and just wanted no government. But people
And yet
have
the
this perception
surveys
that government
surveys
is
say
good.
that there is no faith in government. So what Harry Reid is saying is not in tune with what public surveys are actually saying. So it is our moment to seize, I think.
I think so too. When we start talking about how people have been done dirty, and we can find sympathetic people who have had government problems, dealing with the government all over the place. In They're just by the hundreds on the internet if you're searching. If we start framing things in that way, that these people, these small business owners, these independent entrepreneurs, but using the words regular people who just want to make a living, who just want to X, whatever it is, and the government is stopping them. we paint that big monolithic government thing as this evil thing that's, sort of swooping down and bopping people on the head and telling them no. Nobody wants to be told no, and nobody likes the bully. So we cast that entity as the bully and these people as the heroes for fighting back. It's out of a Hollywood movie. People will eat that up, but we have to use those cases.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that we talk a lot about stuff that doesn't get enough sharing. It doesn't get shared enough. Reason TV has a stack of videos that high, and it is just it's amazing the stuff that government puts on people, and it's terrible the bullying that occurs. And we talk that's something that has been a big thing in the country for the past few years, the past 10 years really, has been the whole, oh my God, bullying is so awful and bad and terrible and stuff. Let's talk about some bullies. Let's talk about the way that the government is bullying and harassing people. And it's not just conservative groups looking for tax exempt status. It's people in real life doing real jobs and getting railroaded by having ditches on their farm that get filled up with water that is suddenly a horrible, horrendous thing, or not being able to grow a garden in your front lawn, or any of the other billion other things that the government is doing to clamp down on people's freedom. So these are things that we need to talk about, and I think that it's something that we have the ammunition. We just need to figure out how to use it productively. I mean, I just watched two different videos today, one from Reason and one from Illinois Policy Institute, on this exact subject, and I need to share them around. But this is not a small issue. This is not something that people don't care about. This is a big deal, and this is something that is a growing problem, something that people are responding to and are not happy with, not pleased about. The fact that they're driven into underground economies because of regulations.
And the way that this would have been messaged by think tanks or groups that put together messaging in the amateur way, what you would have seen is the Blob. They would have put together the Blob film, and it's eating up a town, or it's eating up a state, or whatever, and it would have been very amateurish, but it would have been, yeah, there's your visual, but it would not have been related to people at all. We can do concepts out the wazoo, but until you make it personal, it's not going to matter to people as much. And that's what I want our guys to do. All the people that are running as conservatives, all the people all the way from the presidential office down to your local councilman, they need to start talking about the damage done by big government, and that they should be saying everything that we look at, we should be asking, is this necessary? Is this going to hurt somebody? Can this policy be used as a weapon against people? All those sorts of things. We need to be having those discussions come out of our candidates and out of our think tanks and out of our conservative messengers. That's another thing that we could do. There's another action item, is find those stories and send them to us. We'll put them together. We'll share them out, far and wide as much as we can, and you should do the same. Anything people find that helps demonstrate that, let's start collating those. Get huge long lists that we can send to candidates and say, hey, you should be talking like these things. Let's do some proactive work. And anybody talking to any elected official or candidate, we should be talking in those terms as well. If they aren't going to think of this themselves, we have to teach it to them.
Like parading, showing people off who've been hurt by Obamacare, of which there are legions. People who've lost their doctor, had their premiums go through the roof, all the other issues that Obamacare has had, and they've been legion. Though that that's a perfect example of what you're talking about.
Right, and it has to be done for that particular thing for Obamacare. It has to be done in a way that's going to overcome the, oh, we did a really good thing by passing Obamacare. Look at all these people who were helped. The administration was really quick to start putting those stories out, and the ones of the damage that were done and the coverage loss were trickling out a little bit at a time, not through candidates or the GOP or the RNC. It was just, whoever happened to have a story and they put it out. It wasn't a focused effort. Reince, what are you guys doing up there? You've missed so many opportunities. But, it's telling the Obamacare stories, but not stopping there. But making sure that if you point out damage that's done, like people dying, as happened recently, that's going to impact people more than I lost my coverage or my premiums went up $12,000 or whatever it is. Those are horrible things. Don't get me wrong. But it's very difficult to overcome the feeling that Obamacare supporters have of, we did a good thing, and now you're just trying to make us look like we did a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, that's delightful that's the situation that we're in. Meanwhile, we can't use the VA as a political football because veterans, and we'll get painted as bad guys. We can, there's a lot of stuff in the way of Reince going and messaging that correctly. But you're right; they definitely need to be doing something more than getting a guy dressed up in a squirrel costume, which is depressing.
Weird.
How did I miss the guy dressed up in a squirrel costume?
I would I would explain it, and I would show it to you, and I would share
Is
the
it as
video.
stupid as the scary Uncle Sam stuff?
It's worse. Quite
Oh
frankly,
God,
it's worse. And honestly, I don't have too much trouble with the scary Uncle Sam stuff. It's not the greatest messaging in the world, but I think that it at least does a better job of getting the point across.
What was the point
Than,
of the carnival one, other than that clowns are scary and I don't like carnivals? I didn't really get that one at all. The
there was
most recent one.
there were a lot of all of the carnival stuff had stuff to do with healthcare. It had stuff to do with rising premiums. It had to do with losing your doctors, the broken promises of the left.
And
But
we're not the market for that, Leslie.
Yeah, I'm
You and
totally
I are not the market.
I'm
And
I'm
they are actually going to do a carnival on the National Mall to gain attention for this sort of thing. They are, messaging to young people that they got screwed by Obamacare, and it's only getting worse. And I'm content to let them do that and find other ways to talk to people in my generation.
Yeah, because I don't get that at all.
it's I think it's a generation
Other
gap.
than I did see Kurt Schlichter once. You'd pointed out that Kurt was in there, and I had to watch it I watched it the first time, kind of with my jaw dropping, going, "What the hell is this I'm watching?" Ugh, I've never liked carnival stuff, and this just really made it worse.
Right.
Um,
But
and I was like, "Oh, but I didn't see Kurt Schlichter." Okay, I watched it again, and then, oh, there he is. There's Kurt.
but that's also the point, is that you don't like carnivals, and that's what's happened. It's turned your healthcare into a sideshow, or into a freak show is basically is one of the punchline, or one of the big lines from the from the video. That's something that's said in there, and I think it gets that point across. I think it's an illustration of the stuff that you're going through. So. Or of stuff that we're going through. My generation is going through, dealing with this
I
BS.
just don't understand you young people these days. Never felt so old. Oh my God.
Yeah,
It's better than saying, "Hey, we're with it with all the hip stuff. Hip to what the kids are doing these days."
Oh my God, that would be so sad.
If you don't get it, don't go there. That's all I'm saying. Don't fake it.
yeah, it's yeah. But
Yeah, earlier today I was that spinster lady doing crocheting in Afghan, literally. So, yeah, I'm old.
Hey, I got
uh,
a ton of get off my lawn stored up to use on people. I'm just not when I don't have to.
yeah, no, I think that there's something to be said for that ad campaign, and it's yet to fulfill its full capacity. There's still stuff that they're working on. It's in progress. It's incomplete grade on that, but
I'm
they're
really
actually
glad
doing
they're doing it
something.
and they're trying. So,
Yes,
yes.
thank you. That's
And
that's the thing.
and that I will say that the carnival thing did show that there is funding, creativity, and production values. I'm not sure that the message was exactly right, but there are people there who are creative and can put together something and film it and do effects and props and costumes and all of that kind of stuff. So they've got the talent. They just need, I think they need a better story and a better plot. But again, I'm not their target market, so.
Hey, and we know people over there, so hopefully we can, maybe give them some ideas, maybe give them some concepts to think about. So, that's always a possibility, always something to do. But again, I would really like to see what happens when they have these, when they actually go and do this on the national lawn or wherever it is it's going to happen. But and I think they're actually taking it around to college campuses too. So, that's potentially a thing. It's potentially something that could change some minds in some places, and at the very least bring up the uh, what's actually going on to people who are otherwise ill-informed. I mean, when you're talking about my generation, you're talking about people who are getting informed via Tumblr and The Daily Show, which is kind of a horrific thing to think about, but it's the truth. So, um, you know, it couldn't. To me, I don't think it hurts. I don't think it's going to be a detriment to our messaging. But it certainly isn't as broad doesn't have the broad appeal that certain other ad campaigns might, and certainly doesn't have the broad appeal that telling the actual stories of people who are actually affected by government in a bad way, would. So
And it wasn't as stupid as Pajama Boy, so.
Ugh.
So,
Ugh.
that's
at least
that's a
it wasn't.
win. That's a win in and of itself. As long as we're not looking that dumb. And I
Right.
think that was a pretty well, understood. I don't think that we walked out of that one on the losing side, even though we tried our hardest by making fun of the kid to make ourselves look stupid. So, thankfully we somehow wound up leaving the pajama boy situation positively, which was a good sign. So, ay, ay, ay.
And don't you love that all you have to say now is Pajama Boy and everybody just knows? That kid, whoever that, and he's not a kid, he's a young man, he's whoever
No,
he is, he regrets being
He's
at
a
work
nasty
that
little
day.
bugger.
he
No,
is a
he's a nasty little
yeah,
I don't think
bugger.
he regrets it at all, actually.
Oh,
no.
really?
No. Yes. Yes. He is mean.
He's a
Oh,
Some of the
nasty
things.
piece of work.
Yeah. You don't feel sorry for Pajama Boy.
okay.
No. You read some of his blog posts, some of his tweets. They're not so good. But yeah,
Oh, okay, then I don't feel bad for disliking him.
right.
Isn't it cool the way that works?
I don't feel sorry for him. I can just dislike him completely. But yeah,
Right.
I do think the one size fits all type of campaign
Hmm.
could be done well, to target our demographic, the older people demographic. But I think it can also be done well for as a gen op kind of thing, because it really does. We're the generation that started the whole customize your world thing, because we started the choose your computer at Dell. We're the ones who started that.
Oh,
Um,
hey, what is it? Charm bracelets.
Oh gosh, Ada bead
bracelets,
necklaces.
add beads, all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. We started the whole customized thing.
What are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about?
Shut
What?
up.
Yeah, yeah,
Shut
yeah.
up, little
Child. And
child.
and it has expanded and become not so much of a new cool thing, but more just an assumed way that the world works.
Yes.
It's not something new and different. It's not a feature, it's an underlying function of, it's just assumed that everything is customized. And how you customize it is the only question. We started the world of you buy this thing and you can customize it. Being able to customize it was a feature. And now it's just a part of the infrastructure. And the fact that most of the liberal, progressive, old-fashioned policies come from a day when you had one one member of the family that actually worked outside the home, and he worked in the same place for 30, 40 years. His entire professional career was at one company, and he was married to the same woman, and he had the same children. And so that one company that provided health insurance was their family doctor for their entire life. And that one company that provided their insurance, it was okay that their insurance came through their employer because they only had one employer. And that's no longer the world we live in. We have both adults work, and you change jobs every 2 or 3 years, or you have multiple part-time jobs. How do your employers, it just back in the 70s and 80s when women started working, and employers, insurance companies had to start the whole process of coordinating insurance, and you'd go to a doctor and you'd file paperwork, and there was a question on there, are you going to file this with your other insurance provider? That was an added complexity back in the 70s and 80s, and it's gotten way worse since then. And there's no benefit to the patient or to the doctor or anyone for that process to continue. We keep patching a thing that is fundamentally flawed because the world is no longer the same world of employer provided health care, and it's certainly no longer the world of uh, nation provided health care. That came about post World War II when London was a bombed out shell of itself and food was still being rationed and hospitals were still recovering from the Blitz. And that was when the the National Health Service stepped in. And, that was the beginning of a nation state providing health care to its people. These philosophies, these ideas are at their most modern, they are for a post-World War II society. How the heck are we considering that progressive? This is old-fashioned
Well, and
manual
I addressed that
typewriter
in
stuff.
right. I addressed that even when I was talking about immigration in my piece. Spoiler alert, just yesterday, is that the grandparents are
Hmm.
in charge. The people with the old ideas are in charge, and the parents are saying no, and the grandparents are saying yes to all the people coming across the border. And it's that whole almost 100-year-old philosophies that we're looking at for the modern world. And what you have to do is, as parents, which is the American people in this scenario, take back the power. You can't let the grandparents be in charge anymore. You can't let the people try to fit that one size fits all old ideas to stay in power anymore. You've got to take that away from them and become, by default, the party that has ideas, that has different options for different people, and that customization model. What we're getting is big government imposes those one size fits all in everything.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter. There's no case review. There's no individuality. It's just, this is the law and this is what we're going to do, and that's it. There's no choice on your part. And we need to get those grandparents, and that's the whole progressive movement. We need to get the grandparents out of power. Anything else that we're doing is secondary to that goal.
Oh, and that fits in with the Hillary and Elizabeth Warren are just so damn old.
They're both very much grandmas, and they have very much grandma
Old
policies.
ideas, and Joe Biden's older than dirt. You know, I,
Hmm.
it all kind of it all can kind of fit in and tie together as a message that's kind of unified and a thread that follows. I think we can start. I don't know that there's necessarily yet a slogan or a hashtag or a meme for it, but we can start using these philosophies in our introductions to stories that we share. We can, when we see interesting blog posts out there that we want to share with other people, the intro we put on it can be a spin that tosses that idea out there, that puts it in that framework. You know what I'm saying? What are you
Yeah.
laughing at?
Oh no, I was just I had an idea for the hashtag that would stand for that, and it's stand with Rand, but that's just me being a punk kid, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. You are a
My
punk kid.
it's just
He's our punk kid, and we're going to use him mercilessly to get our goals accomplished, aren't we?
Totally,
every time, every
totally.
time. This is what happens every
Yeah,
single
but did you
time.
see how much he kicked butt this past week with all of those
I
videos? That was so
know. I
awesome.
I,
know.
I only did I only did the snipping and the pasting and the that stuff.
You
Everybody
put
else
the
was.
intro thing, and you figured out which ones to
It took me
save and
two.
where to
Took
save.
me 2 minutes. I'm so happy to do it, and I appreciate the appreciation, but I also appreciate the fact that people went through the clips and went through and watched them, went through and watched the original, and found the things for me to clip out. So
Yay,
it's a
team.
teamwork thing. Yes,
High
And
five.
and
once we get
that's what we'll
lots and
do.
lots, once we get lots and lots of viewers, we're gonna monetize the crap out of it, and we're gonna get rich. Okay? Now we need somebody to auto tune us. I'm seeing dollar signs. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
I, yeah. I think we're at that point of the show again.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm going to write down call Shmoyoho.
What?
Do what?
The guys who did auto tune the news.
Ah,
I
great.
knew their name and you didn't, Mr. YouTube.
I didn't hear what you said. I sounded like. "Ugh."
Yeah, you cut out the quality went all blurry and stuff.
It did.
Okay.
I got you back, JD. I got you back.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Shmoyoho.
I would not have
Sure.
recognized it even if that had not been cut out.
Whatever you say there, Fishy. Whatever you say.
The best auto tune the news ever will always be um, they're climbing in your windows.
Yes, Antoine Dodson.
Antoine Dodson, yes.
See, see, I know names too.
Hide your wife.
Hide your wife, hide your
I
kids.
know Antoine. I know Antoine. I know who that is.
Man.
I may have to watch that one. Somebody send me the link. I need to watch. I haven't watched it in a while. Hide your kids. Well, that was so awesome. There are those videos that you can watch over and over and over again, and it's funny every single time.
Yes.
Well, that would okay. The other auto tune thing wasn't auto tune the news, but it's the guy who is complaining about the YouTube comments. JD knows which one I'm talking about. Thousands of Barack Obamas.
Yeah.
JD knows which one.
Ay, ay, ay.
Okay, I need to be in on that.
YouTube is a vast and wondrous place.
Never read the comments.
No,
Ever.
Always read
never,
the
ever,
comments.
never, ever.
Always read the comments.
No.
I don't have that much life left. My hit points I've done some damage. I've taken some damage. I can't afford the hit
Oh, you
points.
just reminded me that's the reason why we're why my generation is so big on the customization. Blame Japan. It's all the fault of Pokemon. It was Pokemon. That's it. That's all that happened. So everybody had their own teams. That's why we have so much, focus on the customization thing. Blame Japan.
I
Wouldn't you
think
blame Magic the Gathering instead?
No, because Magic was nowhere near as high profile as Pokemon was. Pokemon
Oh, okay.
was a huge deal compared to Magic. So anyway, now that we've been on that tangent,
Yeah, I have a YouTube playlist of need to laugh, and it's got Shark Cat. I'm sure you've all seen Shark Cat. Um, and it's got the thousands of Barack Obamas. What it doesn't have is the one. It's the monkey riding backwards on. Who's a little song? What is that song?
Baby
Baby
Monkey on a
Monkey.
pig. Baby monkey riding backwards on a pig.
Oh man,
Baby
she
monkey.
doesn't know. Fishy, she doesn't know.
You don't know Baby Monkey.
No,
What?
she knows Baby Monkey. She's aware of Baby Monkey, but she doesn't know the significance of Baby Monkey riding
I don't.
backwards on a pig.
You have to say we'll close with that.
Yes, that's a good thing to close on.
What's the story of baby monkey riding backwards on a pig?
It was a big deal with Larry O'Connor and the Hollywood Chat Pack. That was a huge deal back in the day in the blog talk radio days of things. It was kind of a big deal.
That's the whole story.
That's pretty much the whole story.
You just watched it all the time. You can't
It,
you can't
You
watch
were
Baby
forced
Monkey
to
and not
listen
laugh.
to it.
First, yes, exactly.
As a
So
matter of fact, that's not on that. Okay, I've got to look up Baby Monkey riding on a pig. I have to add that to my playlist. And of course, there are multiple versions of it because people want their. But the one with the 20 million views. See, I need to come up with something that's going to get me 20 million views because I want the money. I like money.
20 million views isn't going to get you that much money, to be quite honest, with the way YouTube works. So you need to
Oh,
have
really?
consistent 20 million views.
Oh,
There you go. So
oh.
then you're in some real cash.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Monetizing YouTube videos, it sounds like a great idea, but I'm just not sure that the annoyance of having to skip the ad at the beginning or seeing the overlay ads, I'm just not sure that that's worth any potential revenue that you're going to get.
I think this is another generational deal that I want to bring up. My dad can ignore any and all commercials on TV and any and all commercials on radio. I listen to all of them. I can't not listen to them. But he is frustrated by YouTube video ads and by video ads of any kind on the computer, whereas I am completely immune to them. I can wait the 5 seconds it takes to click skip ad, or just have it just not be a deal. 15 seconds for an ad before a video, it doesn't bother me. I switch windows and I mute it. I mute it and I switch windows for the 15 seconds that it takes for the commercial to go through. So there you go. That's another thing to add to the generation gap.
Hmm.
Well,
Never felt
and
so old in my.
our generation remembers when ads would load or pop-ups would be a problem. You'd had 80 pop-ups on your screen. There's a great episode of IT crowd where that's happened, and we can relate to that. Anything that pops up, any advertising, we associate it with those pop-up days.
And
Never
that
happened.
and that nightmare day at work when you had to search something and you didn't really know what you were doing because Google was new, and you searched something and you clicked the first result and it was a porn site,
No,
and
God.
you hit back and it doesn't go back, it just loads another freaking site and back loads another freaking site, and then there's another pop-up, and you're at work and you've got all of these porn windows popping up all over your computer and you can't make them to go away,
This sounds
and all
this
you can
sounds
do
like
is
something
turn
that you're
off your
familiar
monitor.
with.
Yes.
This sounds like something that happened. Is this something that you want to tell us about there, Leslie? Did this
It
happen to
really
you?
happened. It really, and I'm sure I'm not the only person out here that it really
Amazing.
happened to.
Amazing.
It really
My
did.
sister trying to force science, people, trying to look up something about hatching eggs from
Hmm.
chickens, types in something to do with chicks.
Oh
Oh
wow.
no.
And there you go. Yeah.
Just saying, it's a thing.
It before we all got smart about safe search mode and knowing all of this, most of us know about that because we did it wrong once. And inevitably, when you do it wrong, you're at the office
Yes,
or you're
experience is
there
a
with your mom.
hard teacher.
Or
Hmm.
you were there with your mom. Oh wow, this is awesome. This is amazing. Thank goodness for end products, for actual, things that are completed and worked that you don't have to worry about. That's very nice. I don't have to deal with these prototypes.
No beta testing for you.
No beta tests for me. No alphas, no betas. We're on to the full release. Ay ay ay.
Ay, ay, ay.
Well, that was
Yes.
a lot of fun. I think we enjoyed it, even
Bit
though
of
we
a
talked a lot of
tangent.
serious stuff. You know,
Yes.
we had a good conversation, and we're still smiling, and we're still friends at the end. Look at that.
Yes, I think that makes for a good meeting no matter what happens, even if we didn't accidentally click on any porn today. Oh, wait, no, or is that, it's a good meeting because we didn't accidentally click on any porn today?
Right.
I get
Not
kind of
despite
confused.
not despite having not clicked on porn. Right.
Okay, it's been a good meeting and we didn't
And
accidentally
thanks,
click on
George,
any.
for showing up on short notice from the chat to the show.
Yeah,
Glad to do it.
absolutely.
And,
Glad to do it.
and we'll be here next week to meet and discuss how to message things and make the world a better place every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Texas time. And this has been The Refinery. I'm going to end the broadcast now. Bye, everybody. Say bye.
Bye.